WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. It is the beginning of a week of a lot of drinking, just water, I promise, as well as eating, and it's going to be chilly, so it's going to be like Minneapolis. Welcome to Atlanta. Chris Pika is here.
The mayor.
Luke Jones is here. We're on Radio Row. Tell everybody where we are, because this is the Georgia World Congress. It sounds so Confederate or something like that.
I'm not going to go down those roads here in Georgia for
been here 5 minutes and I'm already on. They fix elections here. It's lovely here.
No
can't wait to get home.
No jokes about Sherman. No jokes about
By the way, we figured out today, and this is great because we're driving in and we were going to do an Atlanta segment. And we're thinking about, Gary Williams and cutting down the nets here. And I remember the last Super Bowl here and the ice and all that. And he and I went back and forth on Hank Aaron and the home run and the Jim Leyritz home run. I was at that game. And then I said, they lost 2 hockey teams here. Yes. And he's like, what was the name of the other one? And I said, the Flames. And he's like, he's not a hockey guy at all. Yeah. And he said, the Flames. And I'm like, how did they get the names? And I said, Flames. What was ever burning in Georgia? And I thought to myself, they named the hockey team after the burning down of the state. Or am I right or am I wrong?
I don't know
they were the Atlanta Flames.
We're not even
going
to make it to the media party Tuesday night. They're going to be sending our butts home.
Google that.
Yeah, the Flames and the Thrashers are Gone with the Wind, if you want to make the other reference to Atlanta. The movie obviously, was here.
Oh, right. Okay.
Speaking of burning of Atlanta and Sherman.
There you go.
You can't make those, you got to be careful making those jokes.
Here's my first Atlanta story. My cousin lived up in Alpharetta. Actually, it might have been in Cumming, but up north of here, above Sandy Springs. And my buddies and I decided to chase girls, drink beer, and live the MTV dream. Dave, you listening? Okay, I got young people here, so I'll make sure they're young people down in Jacksonville trying to learn things. So speaking of Jacksonville, we were going to Jacksonville because we were going to Daytona Beach. So I'm working at the Sun, and my buddies we pile in the car. We got a rental car, and we were going to drive to Daytona Beach for spring break. This is in March. So it turns out that they were playing March Madness games at the Omni.
Right.
And I flew to Milwaukee this week to see the new basketball gym. I know you love minor league stadiums. You've been in more facilities than maybe anybody I know because you worked in minor league baseball. You've done basketball. You've been in hundreds and hundreds of facilities. And there's some allure, about all of these places. So the Omni was weird because it was sort of whatever 8 sides is. That's not the octagon, would you say? I guess that's the shape. But it had weird seating. It wasn't square in the way the seating. And I had only been there one time in my life. The only story I have is, but I always wanted to go there because Dusty Rhodes wrestled there. And he had Starcade.
When you walk into State Farm Arena for the Super Bowl opening night, on the concourse, one piece of the Omni still remains. The scoreboard, the original scoreboard from the Omni that hung over the board, is actually in the concourse of State Farm Arena.
Where was the Omni?
Basically almost on the same footprint.
Oh, wow.
Very, very close to the same footprint. So that when they built the World Congress Center and they built State Farm Arena, which was Phillips Arena originally, basically that was on sort of the Omni's part of the footprint was the Omni.
It's fascinating over the last 30, 35 years how much all of this is spun now that they've erected a dome, pulled the dome down, erected an Olympic facility, pulled it down, turned an Olympic stadium into a baseball stadium in the parking lot next to the other stadium.
And now
it's like at the edge of town and forgotten about, and we're going to move the baseball team uptown where the folks that come to baseball games live.
Right, but also remember that stadium that went from an Olympic stadium to a baseball stadium is now a football stadium. That is now the home of Georgia State football. So it's now called Georgia State Stadium. No longer Turner Field. It was retrofitted for football a year ago. Georgia State moved into the facility
They didn't name it after Lefty?
No.
All right.
So what Georgia State did was they bought all of that area where the old stadium, the old TED was, and that large
listen, you're getting all local, the old TED.
But you look at all this up here. But where the field was where Hank Aaron hit the home run, Georgia State's actually going to put their college baseball stadium at that spot, and that entire parking lot is going to become retail, mixed-use housing, and student housing because their campus almost comes right up to the edge of that large parking lot where the old stadium was.
Cool.
So Georgia State, that's going to be a huge deal for downtown Atlanta. That's already starting to be built. They're already working on it.
When I think of my first sports memories, the Hank Aaron home runs there. I mean, 74, I was 5, almost 6, 5.5. You know, like I absolutely remember my dad
David
sitting and
too.
watching it on TV. Dude, I'm old, man. It's just, you see all that silver come in on Pika, and when you see it on me, it's wisdom. I just want you to know that when it's coming in here. Chris Pika is on Radio Row. All of our Super Bowl coverage brought to you by our friends at LifeBridge Health Sports Medicine Institute. The good doctors are going to be coming on this week. Also brought to you by friends at Royal Farms. Real fresh, real fast, and the tasty coffee. I promise to have all my props. I'm going to be hydrated, caffeinated, opinionated. Tom Brady.
That's new.
Look at this, Chris.
I can't look at it.
Look at that.
I've 17 Super Bowls for me. I've seen it 9 times. I've seen it plenty.
I was going to say, this is Super Bowl number 8 for me, and the Patriots have been in 5 of them.
Right. 17 for me. This will be 9.
Incredible.
As a matter of fact, Super Bowl Sunday will be the 18th anniversary of the first Super Bowl I worked in New Orleans. Same 2 teams, Super Bowl 36. The start of the Patriots dynasty when they were the upstart and the Rams were the greatest show on turf.
Well, everybody can see I'm wearing my orange on our Facebook Live and our YouTube Live. It's I actually have orange and black shoes, too. I just want everybody to see that it's officially – that's going to make for a great shot on the Internet. When I screenshot that with Chris, I was just showing the shoes. I'm sorry. That it's baseball season. So we want to talk some baseball here. I want to get Luke into this here. You did Fan Fest here this weekend. Give everybody the tenor of baseball in Atlanta because you love baseball. You spend a lot of your summer nights. I see you. You spend a ton of time at the new ballpark, SunTrust Park, right?
Yeah, so I'm out there working for visiting team television, handling the score bug that you see on TV. So I'm out there about 50 nights a year.
And it's worked, right? Like
it really has
they've
worked.
won. Like the Rams have. When you win early, it helps.
It does. And they were built. This team was basically not built for this past season. They were really built for this year. Winning 90 a year early was a nice surprise for them, but I don't think they thought they were going to win the division this past season. It's basically a live, work, play area. The Braves were very smart about what they did with Cobb County. It caught the city of Atlanta by surprise, quite honestly, because they were trying to get the city of Atlanta to let them do that around Turner Field. The city obviously, didn't really have the money to do that.
To sort of like envision it, it would be if, for the White Marsh fans we have, if the stadium would have been put down somewhere at 43 and 95, or in our city, it'd be more like Pikesville, Owings Mills area. It's on the northwest side of town,
right?
But it's sort of attached to shopping and an avenue,
correct? Yes.
Kind of feel, right?
You've got a hotel in dead center field in Omni. You have shopping, restaurants, concert space, and a lot of housing. Not only you've got apartments and all that around it, and the Braves have a piece of all of that. They get
the Cubs took all the piece of everything they have up in. I mean, this is the new play. Marty talks about this all the time, Luke. I mean, the play is the land play around facilities and building the Gillette Stadium Mall.
Right.
That's where all the dough is going to be.
The Cowboys are the king of it. What they did in Frisco, where the Star is, and I was there in March. I go there every March for the Conference USA basketball tournaments held there, and I work for the week. They've got a part of every lease for every business that's there. They've got some housing around it. They've got some pieces of. There's a hotel also they got 50% of. The biggest thing is that their office building that they use as their headquarters, they only use 40% of it. The other 60%, Jerry leases out. Hey, you want an address at the Star in Frisco to share with the Cowboys? We got a spot for you. So there's legal. There's a bunch of offices out there. 60% of that Cowboys headquarters building is available to be leased by anybody outside the Cowboys. So Jerry's just making money like crazy, and the Braves did the same thing. And the smart part about that is it's not in the CBA. Whatever the Braves are making from everything that's around that stadium, that's going into the Braves'
Nick
coffers.
Markakis ain't getting a piece of that.
No, the CBA is not getting any piece of that. That was a smart play that Robert Kraft did in New England, what the Packers are doing around Lambeau Field. So it is the new trend. And I'm sure the Players Association is probably trying to figure out how they can get a piece of that, which they really can't. But the Braves were smart about it. So Liberty Media that owns them is making a lot of money off of what's around it 365 days a year. I mean, the ballpark's only there 82 games, and they're bringing concerts in and other events to the stadium too. So they've done a nice job in the first 2 years.
The Angelos family's now gotten into the Piano Man business. Billy Joel played. He was the first concert at SunTrust, wasn't he?
Yes, he was actually. Yep.
I almost came into that show.
Metallica's played there. Journey and Def Leppard have played there. So they've been real proactive in trying to get other events. And then the Braves do a lot of post-game concerts.
So what you're saying is Van Halen and Jimmy Buffett never sued the Braves?
Not that I'm aware of.
Just checking.
Not that I'm aware
But maybe not Shania Twain. So we're down here all week. We're in Atlanta. We're doing some baseball. You spent the whole day doing baseball on Saturday. Yeah, and it's a fascinating thing what's happened to the Braves down here because it is sort of this model of one of the things that could save the Orioles, moving the team to the suburbs, which would be talked about. If it weren't Camden Yards, I guess. It was easy to leave the TED, right, in Atlanta, and the money's there. But I'm wondering how the Orioles are going to do this, getting people back, and part of that's winning. They had a nice day on Saturday. You were part of it.
Yeah, and we talked about the Braves. It sure helps to create excitement with a new ballpark when you have an Ozzie Albies and a Ronald Acuna.
Yep.
I mean, you're talking about two of the brightest young stars in the game, and the quickest way that this is going to happen for the Orioles, and I've talked about this a lot, I'm a huge fan of Mike Elias. I'm a huge fan of Sig Mejdal. I'm not as 100% convinced on Brandon Hyde, but everything I've seen about him, everything I've heard about him, I really like. I think he's not necessarily the guy, but I think he's a guy that is right for what they need at the manager position right now. But you can try to speed up this process or do this process in the right way as much as you can. It sure helps if you can find the next Manny Machado or the next Ozzie Albies or the next Ronald Acuna or, just go down the list. So much time is spent this offseason talking about free agency and the lack of movement. This game is dominated by its stars right now, and those stars are 26 years old and younger. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. And
as I sit under a Tom Brady poster here.
That's the one exception. I mean, we always talk about these, it's a young man's game, right? Yep. I mean, that's never been truer in baseball than it is right now. So if you're the Orioles, it's tough right now, and there are so many analogies as far as you're planting seeds, right? You're gardening, and for the longest time you're not going to bear any fruits there, but that doesn't mean there aren't good things happening. And they're still in this position now where they're building infrastructure, they're hiring scouts. Mike Elias even talked about this on Saturday, that being realistic about it, their optimal staff that they want to have probably isn't going to be completed until next year when they can kind of go into the start of the
they had a late start literally on everything.
Right.
Every part of it was late.
And look, I'm fine with it being late if you got the right guy. And I think this looks like as good of a hire as they could have possibly made. I sincerely believe that. After reading Astro Ball, I believe that even more.
Chris, have you read Astro Ball yet?
I have not.
We're going to get you a copy of that.
I mean, not just Mike Elias, but Sig Mejdal, who's going to head up their analytics. And he had my favorite part of FanFest on Saturday. And they give us a long schedule of us, meaning media. They'll bring in Elias, they'll bring in Brandon Hyde, they'll bring in the coaches, all the players, even some prospects, which I thought was a good idea to even do that. They had the likes of Austin Hayes and they had Keegan Aiken and Dean Kramer, guys like that who good chance they're going to be in Baltimore at some point over the next year or two. But
by the way, my wife drove past the warehouse to drop me off at the airport, and she says, Adam Jones is back with the Orioles, isn't he? And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And I'm like, she's like, well, at least they have one player I heard of, Adam Jones. And I'm like, honey, he's not with him anymore. Well, he was with him at the end of last year. I'm like, yeah, end of last year was a long time ago. But she did concede that Chris Davis is still with the team.
Yeah, Chris Davis, and the fun, and I'll get back to, I want to make a point about Sig Mejdal, but now that you mentioned that, probably the funniest line from Saturday's FanFest was talking to Trey Mancini, who is now entering his third full season in the major leagues. So we're talking about a guy who's still very young. And toward the end of last year, after they blew it up and they had the fire sale, and he was one of the more veteran guys left. Trumbo was gone for the year at that point, and Davis is what he is at this point. We'll have plenty of time to talk about him. But he said that one of the younger guys, and he was thrown into being a player rep with the union, one of the younger guys went up to him and asked him for advice on what to do with his 401k. And he said, I kid you not, guys, I was the one asking the veterans in our clubhouse that a year ago. So really does speak to how the dynamic of this roster is just so incredibly different, and it's going to be really ugly. But my favorite part of FanFest on Saturday, they had this wasn't even a media portion of the availability. Sig Mejdal had a Q&A with the fans, and just hearing him talk, and there's such a stigma with the term analytics or sabermetrics in baseball, and it's a phrase that after a while it doesn't mean a whole lot if that's all you're talking about, and so many fans are trying to either embrace it or there's backlash, but he answered every question. He answered questions in a very relatable way. I think what's unique about what they did in Houston compared to what everyone thinks of Moneyball and Billy Beane 15, 16 years ago, the difference with Billy Beane in Oakland was they got to a point where they're basically ready to throw scouts out of the building entirely and just make it completely data-driven, whereas the Astros said, no, we want that. There is absolutely value in that, and we want gut instinct, and we want all the qualitative, you watching these guys, and what do you like about them, and what do you like about their makeup, and they've even put that into their model.
But human intelligence has a value.
They try to quantify that, and they fine tune that, and they don't have it perfect. It's always a moving target. It's always, they're never at a point where they're done. But to hear him talk, and it just, you really got the sense of, one, how smart he is, and two, I think why he's been so successful that he was with in St. Louis and went to Houston, and now he's in Baltimore. He just has a way to not just have data, but he flat out says, our analysts aren't just going to look things up and research and put out a sheet of data and give it to our coaches. They need to explain it. They need to extract what the value is there and explain it to the coaches, and then the coaches, whatever it is, spin rate, tendencies, pitch types that work in certain situations against this hitter, whatever. I mean, we can get into all that. We will get into all that. But it just, there's such a sense of how he talked about this that they're on the same page. And to hear some of the assistant coaches who were just brought on, just formally announced this past week, they didn't just mention Mike Elias. They didn't just mention Brandon Hyde. They mentioned Sig by name. The guy who's on that side of the building, so to speak. And after what we saw here in Baltimore, where initially with Dan Duquette and Buck Showalter, they were kind of cutting edge early on. They were one of the first teams that embraced infield shifting. So it's not as though the Orioles didn't do any of that, but it got to a point, and I don't know if it was ego-driven or certain ideas just didn't get the same traction, but there was such a silo effect to the point where, the Orioles had an analyst. They had some very bare-bones analytics department. But they had analytics. They weren't doing anything. Yeah, they weren't doing anything with it. And just to hear the overall message, and look,
Sig had like a punchline, didn't he?
Yeah, the favorite line that he gave was.
Did you hear this one, Chris? You're gonna like this.
He
one.
Was asked.
I liked it,
and I'll credit the fan base. There were some really good questions asked over the course of that.
Well, if you're paying attention at this point and you're not in the autograph line, right? I mean, there's people there for the autographs, and that's all well and good. But if you're paying attention to Sig Mejdal and you really care what he has to say, you're at a different level or a different kind of baseball fan.
So the question he was asked, it had something to do with, can you assess where the Orioles were from an analytics standpoint when you got here? And I thought he answered it in a professional way, but there was a dryness to it.
Well, of course, analytics are different across the industry. And,
he basically said,
we all value them differently.
Well, when I got here, there were 0 analysts, and the Orioles had 1 analyst, and she moved on. In fact, I think she moved on to Houston.
Right.
Say that again.
So
there were 0
there was
analysts.
1. So he said, I don't know what the ideal number is, but I'm pretty sure it's more than 0. And we're going to have more than 0. So we're moving.
And says the blackjack
But then he went
dealer.
on, and
I want to drink beer with Sig Mejdal.
I didn't even know this, but
It's my goal.
He estimated there's
happen,
roughly
please.
350 analysts working in the major leagues right now. So, that puts you in the neighborhood of 10 to 15 on average for, on any given organization that is putting an effort into it. But again, it's not just that the Orioles, to me, my takeaway isn't that they've suddenly become really nerdy and enlightened in that way. Yeah, there is that, but everything seems to fit. And I think the coaching staff that they've brought in really gets it.
He's drinking the Kool-Aid.
Oh,
you are.
It's not for 2019. It's for 2021,
Yeah,
2022.
I don't think anybody's
this is going to be
for
really
19.
ugly for a while.
Let me reset this. We're down here in Atlanta. We're at the Georgia World Congress. Chris Pika is here. Luke and I, we're going to be here all week. We're on Radio Row. It's all brought to you by our friends at Curio Wellness. Get out and visit them. The holistic spa, cannabis education. Let's see what else they got there. Massage. They do it all. Vitamins at a high level. Don't get sick here this winter. Go see them at CurioWellness.com as well. Chris, you have this unique background in baseball at this level, and it was a little while ago, but riding around with Michael Jordan, I always give you I tip the cap, and we tell your Michael Jordan stories, Uncle Chris. But the fact of the matter is, for every Michael Jordan, there's a million stories Uncle Chris has about these kids that are the Keegan, Dylan, these Tyler, all these names, the kids born in 1999, running around trying to make this happen. And you were at one point a part of that. And that hasn't changed maybe as much from what they're eating, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches tonight, to, but it's probably changed a whole lot when Sig's up top coming down to them and saying inside out and moving pitches and we're going to play here, all of that. And instead of saying, why, or I'm not doing that, or let the Harvard nerds out of here. I think in the modern era, you want to make the show, they're telling you from a kid on, you're going to be listening to these people, right?
Right, and also, too, I mean, it's not just the 25-man roster at the major league level. You're worried about your 6 or 7 minor league affiliates and all of those players. You're scouting guys in college, and you're trying to figure out where the value is of the college players. You're trying to figure out the value of
predictive value is the big thing,
right?
At this point.
And international and high school kids, and that's one of the things about the Braves. The Braves went a little too far on the international side, and it cost the general manager his job and got banned from baseball for life.
As much as this guy up here has cheated over the course of time, a lot of cheating going on in baseball, a lot of colluding going on in the last couple years. I want to know what the hell's going on with Adam Jones. Give him a deal.
Right. But the point I'm trying to make is you've got all of these, the Braves were able to bring in international players, and that's the other part of that that's helped them. And it's certainly, hopefully, that's the one part of the equation the Orioles haven't been able to figure out, and hopefully now with the new group they will. But you're right, it is predictive analytics. It is looking at the next generation of players in high school and college and international and trying to figure out where you draft guys and who's, where can you steal a guy in the lower rounds that you think might be able to do something for you down the line. In those days, in the 90s, Terry Francona's on the phone after the game, every game, and he's reading off the sheet.
This is White Sox.
Right, this is White Sox now, and you're reading off of a sheet. Basically, here's the players' at-bats, hits for the night, and a manager's comment. We would fax the form up to Chicago every night, but he'd have to read it in.
Wow, every kid gets a grade every night.
Right, and so there's a sheet, and then Terry would have to
See, I don't know this. I love learning this stuff.
Tito would have to write it out. We would fax it, but he would also have to call it in every night to a recorded line so that the White Sox could hear it in the morning at the major league level. Hey, so-and-so, the biggest thing you could get tagged with was guy had a long swing, which meant it was a slow swing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, screw Tom Brady. I just want to sit here and talk about this stuff all week. Can we talk about this?
So that's what they did. So pitchers, how many pitches, how many strikes. If they look good, if a guy warmed up on a given night. And so those reports
all of that's computer real time now.
Right now the manager sits in the office. They still do the same report, but he's sitting there in his office doing it and submitting it via online.
And they also have TrackMan data at every
even
ballpark.
Now
in college ballparks.
Yes.
And even in some high schools, they're starting to delve into this, where you have so much data. One of the more interesting things they mentioned was, at this point, we've always talked about what term with pitchers. Velocity, yes. Stuff, right?
Yeah.
How good is their stuff? Now with spin rate, they are actually able to track over time. And they track players who have progressed to certain levels, and they have their data. And this is all about the predictive. They actually can look at velocity and spin rate and they have data as far as, okay, it played at, this guy has this combination. It played from college. It played in low single A, but double A is typically where this kind of spins out, and they're not as effective anymore. And that's not to say there aren't guys that break the mold or adjust, but compared to what Terry Francona had to do 25 years ago.
Yeah, literally in longhand on a sheet writing this out. And then we'd have to fax the front side, and you'd fax the back side and do that. And then to give you an idea, this year, I helped Conference USA out a couple of events. Their baseball tournament, it's in Biloxi. The Biloxi Shuckers of the Southern League. They have TrackMan
installed. Can't say that
installed.
on the radio.
Yes, you can. The Shuckers person who did TrackMan was actually doing TrackMan for the entire tournament and giving all that information to the Brewers.
Sure.
So the Brewers wanted everything from the college tournament to see if there was anybody in there they wanted to take a look at and what information they could glean even from the college players because it helps them in that process.
Chris Pika is here. Luke Jones is here. I am here. We're on Radio Row. We're at the Georgia World Congress. We're going to be here talking about more than just baseball and FanFest and Ravens and John Harbaugh. And what else we got going on this weekend?
Some kind of
Tom
game.
Brady and Jared Goff are going to be here. So our initial foray into things here before the ice storm, before all the fun. And before the teams arrive, we have some Ravens legends. I have a full roster of people this week. I know Shannon Sharp's going to be stopping by, Jamal Lewis, lots of guys with rings. J.O.'s going to be down here this week as well. So we're going to be on Radio Row all week long. Make sure you're checking us out on Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We're out the buy at Toyota.com Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device as well. By getting the TuneIn Radio app, Chris is kicking my feet out from underneath me.
No, pulling my cord, so to speak.
We are WNST.net, AM 1570 at WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports